We talked to Bruno Pickett, who is the Assistant Commissioner for IDEM for water issues, and also Kim Ferraro, who's with the Hoosier Environmental Council. And we talked about some of the things that people could do to ensure that the water in Lake Michigan is kept clear. Are there some things that need to be done from a regulatory standpoint? I remember back in the 1970s, they limited the amount of phosphorus in laundry detergent. Does something similar have to happen here?
That's a great question, and I think it's a real frustration. I think Bruno would probably agree that here we recognize what the issue is with respect to phosphorus on lawns, the fact that we don't need it. Yet this last legislative session, we were trying to push for a bill in the state legislature that would just require education on that issue be posted at retail stores like Walmart. And we got significant pushback from retailers, the retailing lobby on that. A basic thing that could really help raise awareness of that problem. And there are other, of course, regulatory issues as well with respect to how we're regulating agricultural sources of nutrients.
Has agriculture changed just a great deal that it's now causing this problem when this seems like a problem that in many ways was solved like a generation ago, the notion of all these algae blooms on the lake?
Well, it is addition of nutrients in agricultural areas, but I want to add that there are other sources as well. And one of the things that we're doing on the state level in a regulatory manner is we're putting limits on what wastewater treatment plants can discharge for nutrients such as phosphorus. And we're undertaking a new initiative to ensure that wastewater treatment plants, especially the big ones that contribute the most, are monitored and then have appropriate limits on what they discharge. In addition to that, as Kim mentioned, the idea of reducing the phosphorus in your home fertilizer can help. And again, each of these areas is really important because the algal blooms that come are often location specific. You need to patch together a variety of approaches to do it, including incentive programs through our grant programs that the federal government is awarding. Just today, the federal government has awarded grants here in northern Indiana to communities to help put in place best management practices that would reduce sediments and other nutrients from getting off land.
And I think those are in Gary and Hammond. Each
That's
are
correct.
Receiving that. So how much sewer outflow is still going into the lakes?
We have 108 communities around the state of Indiana that have what we call combined sewers. That is, anytime it rains more than, say, 1/10 of an inch of rain, they discharge directly to the rivers, creeks, and streams. And what we have done is put all of those communities into plans to update their system so they don't do that every time it rains. That should help reduce the discharge of sewage and nutrients as well to help prevent these blooms.
Yeah, I'd like to add, not to undermine the CSO problem at all, because it certainly is a serious problem, but it is one that has somewhat of a regulatory fix through limits and consent decrees and legal ways that IDEM has jurisdiction and EPA has jurisdiction to address that. The problem with agriculture is that it's a non-point source of pollution, and so it isn't subject to permit limits. And the industry has been very effective in making sure that that doesn't happen. And so, no slam on IDEM, but they really don't have the regulatory means to bring agriculture into the fold there.
Is that true? IDEM really doesn't regulate
It's
agriculture?
a Clean Water Act that gives the states authority to regulate, and the Clean Water Act does not allow IDEM to regulate farms from that perspective. What we do instead is provide incentives through grant programs to ensure that farmers put in place better practices to help reduce runoff. That is correct, that the regulatory structure is primarily at our point source or municipal wastewater treatment plants or stormwater discharges, but less agriculture.
And just to add to the problem, when you look at the human waste produced, which is somewhat controlled better than agricultural waste, manure from animals, Indiana's livestock produces 17 times the amount of waste than the human population does. So we've got a lot of manure out there that's not really subject to any regulation.
I just had somebody on the radio from Indiana American Water Company. They tested their water after what happened in Toledo. Chicago did the very same thing. How much can we really control this at the filtration plants themselves? What can we take out of the water and what can't you do?
Well, drinking water treatment plants do a good job of treating our water to make sure it's clean. And one of the things they do when they monitor is determine what level of algae is in the water, and they can treat it with something they call powder activated carbon. And that helps really reduce not just taste and odor, but some of the other factors that are associated with blue-green algae.
But now, they can't control the toxins then at all.
They help reduce those as well. Now in Toledo, I believe the system was just overwhelmed. There was just so much blue-green algae just getting into that wastewater treatment plant and going through that system that it was difficult to treat it all with the powdered activated carbon. That situation is not the normal case here in Indiana, and given the geographic differences with the lakes, it is less likely.
All right, Bruno Pickett with IDEM, thank you so much for being on, as well as Kim Ferraro from the Hoosier Environmental Council. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.